It is actually an incontrovertible fact that inflation makes a lot of people to be very poor. In this situation, a lot of people are actually dissatisfied with the high inflationary trend or system in the society, and that is why a lot of people, most especially among the low-income earners and the middle class, they are actually clamoring for a change in the society. You need to understand that inflation is actually responsible for number one, reduced purchasing power, number two, uncertainty and volatility, number three, income inequality, number four, savings erosion, number five, high interest rates, number six, reduced international competitiveness, number seven, many costs, which means business cost, number eight, shoe leather cost, which is what I call individual cost. In a period of inflation, the rich keeps getting richer while the poor keeps getting poorer. It is like the system is actually designed to favor some people at the expense of some people. In other words, inflation is actually favorable to some classes of people in the society, which are what I call the minority class, and it is also affecting the majority class negatively one way or the other. And that is why inflation can actually be a blessing and it can also be the otherwise. The question is, which category do you actually belong to in social stratification? Are you in the upper class or the middle class or the lower class? You need to understand that for the middle class, inflation is not favorable, it is dissatisfactory. For the lower class, it is also dissatisfactory, but for the upper class, it is actually favorable to them. You need to understand that inflation is favorable to the upper class, but dissatisfactory to the middle class and the lower class. A lot of people always say that it's very difficult to be rich or wealthy in a period of inflation, but in this video, I'm going to prove to you that you can actually be wealthy. You can achieve what I call financial independence if you watch this video from the beginning to the very end. So what we are saying here is that inflation can be a blessing to some people who constitute what I call the minority class. In this video, I'm going to prove to you that inflation can actually be a blessing to you, irrespective of your social stratification. If your parents are not rich or you are not born into the rich class, you can still be wealthy in this economic system. If you are not actually born with a silver spoon or born into a wealthy family, you can still be rich in this high inflationary economic situation, because inflation can actually be a blessing. Irrespective of the pain and the agony that is being fed by the majority of the people, you can still make a living out of this economic system. The truth is that inflation actually favors the rich. Wealthy people actually use inflation to grow their wealth. For you to actually grow your wealth, you need to understand what money is actually all about. You see, money is actually a tool. Money is a tool because you can actually use that money that you have to transform yourself from one particular level to another level. In other words, you can actually be wealthy at the end of the day. You need to understand that inflation actually favors some people in the society who are the investors and the entrepreneur. Now, a lot of people will say, but I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not an investor. But it doesn't take anything for you to be an entrepreneur, or it doesn't take anything for you to be an investor. You need to understand that for you to be an entrepreneur, you need to have something that you want to offer to society, and the society is willing to buy what you have to offer to the society. You need to identify a problem, and when you identify a problem, you can actually invest your money and start something at the end of the day. Then apart from that, you need to understand that you can actually become wealthy when you are actually an investor too. Becoming an investor is very, very simple and the most easiest one. Becoming an investor simply means that you need to have what I call financial education for you to be able to know when you can actually invest your money and make profit at the end of the day. If you want to win in this system, then you need to understand how the system actually works. You also need to understand that in a period of inflation, income does not keep up. In other words, money does not have any value. Inflation will continue to occur as long as the government continues to borrow money and as long as the government continues to print money. An average person that doesn't understand how the system actually operates will continue to be poor. This is because the average person actually relies on his salary and his saving. But you need to understand that in a period of inflation, your salary does not work. If you don't have any form of investment, your salary cannot actually save you. And if you're also the type that is actually saving your money, your money can also not save you, because in a period of inflation, that money does not have any value. What can you actually do in a period of inflation that can make you to be very wealthy? Number one thing that you need to do is to take some of the money that you earn at the end of every financial month and transfer them into appreciating assets. In other words, what we're saying here is that you need to transfer your money into asset appreciating portfolio. That is what can actually generate money for you. In other words, you need to invest your money. Number two, you need to avoid spending all your money by setting aside some certain amount of money for investments. Number three, you need to live on your investment and not relying on your salary. This is because your salary cannot take you far, because your salary is going to be overwhelmed by what I call inflation in the society. So for you to actually make money in this economic system, you need to live on your investment and not your salary. Your salary cannot actually take you very far. When you own an asset, your asset actually benefits from inflation. You need to also understand that investment value go up over time in a period of inflation. That is, your money will always compound. Another thing is that you need to split your money into 75, 15, 10. 75% of your money will go into spending, 15% of your money will go into investment, and 10% of your money will go into emergency. The more you actually invest, the more wealthy you become at the end of the day. So you need to keep investing and not stop. Every month you must invest your money. Every time you earn your salary, you must invest some certain amount of money into portfolio investment platforms where you can actually make a lot of money at the end of the day. For you to actually invest, you need to meet your portfolio investment manager that will teach you, that will put you through, that will enlighten you, that will educate you on investment portfolios that can actually invest your money and begin to make more money at the end of the day. In a period of inflation, savings can actually not make you rich, because at the end of the day, inflation is going to overwhelm that money in the bank. Also, in a period of inflation, that money will lose value. Stop depending on your saving as a means of becoming wealthy in the future. Reason, inflation is going to eat into that money. At the end of the day, that money will not have any value. But if you actually invest your money begin to have value, your money begin to multiply, your money begin to compound, your money begin to work for you, and your money begin to grow at the end of the day. There are certain areas you can actually invest your money, which I'm going to talk about now. You can actually invest, number one, into the stock market. Under the stock market, we have what we call the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, the S&P 500, and the VTI, if you're actually an active investor. Now, for you to actually be an active investor, you must have an idea about how the market actually operates at the end of the day. You need to have high level of financial education. If you talk about the Dow Jones, you talk about the 30 companies that we find in the United States of America, that is the 30 strongest companies in the United States of America, constitute what we call the Dow Jones. If you're talking about the S&P 500, you're talking about the most strongest company in America, which constitutes about 500 of them. You can either be a passive investor or an active investor. If you're an active investor, it means that you have an idea about the system, you have an idea about the market volatility, you have an idea about how the system actually operates at the end of the day. Through this, you can actually be what I call an active investor. But if you are a passive investor, it means that you don't have much idea about how the market actually operates. And at the end of the day, you actually give your money to a portfolio investment manager that will manage your fund for you at the end of the day. So as an active investor, the risks are very, very high, and the returns are very, very high as well. But at the end of the day, if you care is not taken, or you don't have an idea about financial education on how the market actually operates, you can lose all your money. So as a passive investor, you actually get a percentage at the end of every financial month, which is agreeable to you based on the money you actually invest. So the secret to investment is that you must keep buying at all time.